halls in our school to fill in an enrolment form. And then they would have a quick one-to-one discussion with one of the members of our sixth form team, one of our sixth form tutors, who would then sort of process that application, and we'd then sort of start transferring that information onto Sims to generate timetables and groups and all that sort of thing. But when I say there were holes in the system, it was quite a tricky day to manage, really, because there was no way of tracking live on that day, right, how full are our maths groups getting, how full are our chemistry groups getting, do we need to start a waiting list for students that want to do psychology, or actually have we got spaces to spare? And every year we would lose a few students essentially due to admin errors. They would have their one-to-one discussion with one of our team members on the day, who would say something like, oh yeah, we should be able to give you a place in psychology. I'll get someone to email you to confirm. But then actually, if that email didn't happen, or if that wasn't communicated to the rest of the sixth form team, then we'd expect students to show up on our first day of term. And then when they didn't, and we'd ring them up, they'd say, oh, right, well, no one ever emailed us to confirm we had that place. So, in an environment where we're looking at getting a sixth form of around 150 students per year, that's our typical aim. If we lose 3 and 4 because of these sort of admin errors, because of it being like I said, a clunky system, then that's quite a big deal in sort of scale that we're looking at. So yeah, the main reason to move to Admissions Plus was to make sure it was a lot more slick, a lot more effective, and to prevent that sort of thing from happening.
Okay, that sounds great. Yeah, it's a huge amount to manage, isn't it, over a small period of time. So how did you find the setup process? Like when you obviously you saw the platform and considered different options, and then after you'd actually chosen Admissions Plus, how did you find the initial setup process, and did the staff undertake their own training using our webinars and so on?
Yeah, so I mean, I suppose the training, sort of getting used to it, sort of started, as Guthrie mentioned, when I actually went to a small gathering in Manchester of other schools and colleges looking at buying into Admissions Plus, where he gave us a bit of a demo of how it worked. And it really didn't take me long, having seen that demo, to realise, yeah, this is exactly the sort of system we're looking for. So the first thing that's really important to say as well is, in that decision-making process, when we actually decided to proceed with Admissions Plus and to use it for our sixth form admissions, was to get our data manager involved. So we've got a lady who runs our Sims and all our data in school, called Tina, who knows how all that works sort of inside out. And it was really important to get her involved in the process of getting our Admissions Plus system set up for our school right from the beginning, because of course, at various points in the sort of the year-long process of sorting applications and offering places and enrolling students and getting their timetable sorted, Admissions Plus has to link to Sims or whatever information system your school uses. And so making sure that your person who runs your Sims or your MIS system is sort of bought into Admissions Plus and knows how it works and know how they speak to one another, so to speak, is really important. In terms of setting it up for our school, I'll be honest, you do have to commit some time to it. It's a sort of thing where you can watch webinars and you can sort of read up on user manuals and whatnot, which are certainly useful. But like any new technologies, it's one of those things where you really only get to grips with it by doing. So I probably spent a fair chunk of time, a good several hours, sort of getting it set up and optimizing it to what we wanted. I'm sure one of the things that Anthony will show you shortly, when he's going to give you a bit of a tour of the system, is there's so many different ways that it can be personalized more to your school. I don't know whether personalized is the right term to use, but you can make it specific to your institution. So from the soft things like the branding, have your school photos and logos all over the place, but exactly what you want to have on your application form. So you can really ask quite a lengthy set of questions, or you can keep it to absolute basics of, student details and what courses they want to study. You can set up automated emails, which are sent out to the referees, so that it's really easy for them to send the reference back. Literally, they get an automated email, they fill in the reference, they ping it back to you. It's all done electronically or through this system. So that, a reasonable amount of time does need to be spent sort of getting to grips with it and making sure that you're confident with it before you're even at a stage where you want to start actually running a live application process. So that's sort of what I was going through this time last year. We decided we were going to go with it. Typically our sixth form open evening happens sort of early in November. So we wanted to have our admission system live and ready and up and running, ready for our sixth form open evening. So that was sort of my deadline to make sure I was confident with how it all worked. And then once I was happy with how it all worked, that's when I got other members of the sixth form team to essentially start playing around with it a bit like by themselves first. Again, one of those learn by doing situations, but then we'd have a few group meetings to see like this, we got the option of setting something up in this way or the other way. What do we think is the best for our sixth form? So yeah, it does need some time and effort investing into it, but certainly from my point of view, the payback for that is all the time that it saves you in the long run by it being a much more efficient system once you've gone through a full application and enrolment cycle.
Yeah, I think we definitely agree that the schools who use our system, who get their data managers involved early, definitely have the smoothest data transfer process to SIMS or to the other MISs that they're using. So yeah, definitely agree with that one. So what are the main benefits that you've seen? Obviously, you've touched upon a few of them there. But are there any other key benefits that you've noticed in your school?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I'll be honest, after 1 year of using Admissions Plus, the actual statistics of what our enrollment looks like speak for themselves. So like I said at the beginning, one of the reasons why we were looking at it is because as a school, we're in a competitive area, and we really, you can't sort of sit back on your laurels and think, oh yeah, loads of people are going to flock to us to join our sixth form without actually putting effort in to promote ourselves. So in a typical year, we aim for about 150 students. We've had a few years in the last 3 or 4 where that number's dipped into the sort of the 120s, the 130s, which again on paper doesn't look significant, but those of you who are aware of school budgets would know that actually 20 fewer students in your sixth form is a fair chunk of money that your school is going to have to plan to be without for that cohort. So having used this system and it, like I said, giving that smart impression and being part of a number of changes, our enrolment has gone through the roof this year. So aiming for a typical 150, and we enroll 178 students on our enrolment day in August this year, which puts us in a kind of a nice dilemma in that a number of our sixth form classes are rather on the big side, bigger than we're used to, but I'd much rather the numbers be going in that sort of direction than us be scraping around trying to fill up our groups and to justify running the range of courses that we do. So yeah, that's one of the main benefits we've seen. It really has helped us boost our numbers. Other benefits along the way, again, our old system, when we, of course, we have a number of our internal year 11s applying to stay on in the sixth form. Typically around 100 of our 150 students come from our year 11. So we, of course, don't need to collect references for those students. But we typically get about 200 applications from newcomers, from students that come from other nearby 11 to 16 schools. And so sending out references for those used to be a paper-based system. We used to send them out in the post. If we were lucky, we'd get a 50% return rate. Whereas now the reference system, where it's all done electronically and ping to and fro by email, has really sped that up. It's reduced our costs in terms of just stationery and postage and packaging, that sort of thing. It saved a lot of time from our sixth form administrators' point of view. And again, I think it's a huge number of marginal gains throughout the year. A student comes to, or you get an email inquiry on results day to say, oh, actually, do you have any spaces in your sixth form? And it doesn't have to be an awkward, oh yeah, let me send this pack out in the post to you, or let me send this to you. Here's the link, fill in the form, we can do it all remotely. And given that we're quite possibly at the start of a school year where none of us really know how much we're going to be in school or out of school. I know that we're all crossing our fingers that we all stay in school as long as possible, but there's a lot of unknowns going on this year. So knowing that we've got a system that will run exactly as we expect it to, whether we're working from home, whether we're working from school, and the same from the point of view of the students as well, yeah, it's quite reassuring. This year, we took the decision just before the summer break that we were going to have to run a remote enrolment day, whereas typically we'd get the students to come in and have those face-to-face conversations, and Admissions Plus was geared up for that completely. We did have a few glitches, but only very minor ones, and that's to be expected when you're using a new system like this first time round. But the prospect of trying to run an enrolment day in the old way that we used to during the current climate with all COVID and social distancing and all that sort of thing, I actually don't know what we would have done if we hadn't sort of already committed to using a new online application system. So, it's been an absolute lifesaver in that sense as well.
Okay, that sounds great. Yeah, I mean, a lot of our schools this year did do, as you say, a virtual enrolment day with the challenges of COVID that we're all living with at the moment. So I guess you partially answered this, but was there anything else about the way that your enrolment day looked and felt this year compared with previous years? Obviously, you mentioned the students couldn't actually come in to the school. Were there any other benefits that you saw with being able to do it virtually?
Yeah, I mean, COVID aside, let's pretend that's not all happening at the moment. Like I said, one of the big flaws with our previous system was this idea that, applications could get lost during the course of the day. It goes on sort of a maybe pile, and it's all very, dare I say it, sort of back of envelope type stuff. Let's keep a list of students that we might be able to fit into this group or that group. So the online system for enrolment this year meant that we could track which students were filling up which courses live as the day went on. You could allocate them to specific classes live as you enrolled them. So sort of rather than enrolling, 70 students onto A-level maths and hoping we'd be able to evenly distribute them across our different maths groups in our different option blocks, we could actually literally allocate them to the specific groups as we went along. And it meant that balancing the groups, for those of you who've had a go at sort of running an enrolment day before, knowing that actually if you end up with a physics group in one band with 20 students and a physics group in another band which has only got 5 students, and lots of students can't be moved to even that out because of their other subject options, that's a bit of a dilemma, a bit of a problem that you want to avoid. And the Admissions Plus system helped us with that hugely, because you just allocate them as you go. Staff can see how many students are in each group live as the day goes on, so you can see your numbers totting up during the course of the morning. And so that made that side of things, really very straightforward. And it meant that when we had those queries of, oh, I had said I was going to do sociology, but now I'd actually like to swap and do RE, is that possible? Well, we'd be able to answer them pretty much there and then, say, actually, yeah, the RE groups looks like it's definitely going to have spaces. Let's add you in there. And conversely, rather than giving false hope to students, the one we always seem to have is students wanting to swap on to business studies. I don't know whether that's a local thing for us, but we always seem to have more students wanting to do business studies than we anticipate. And we will be able to be quite honest with those students there and then on the day to say, look, the business studies group really is looking full at the moment, so it's highly unlikely that's going to be able to occur. Whereas previously we just had to say, oh, we'll write you on a list and we'll get back to you. So yeah, having that live information really, really made things work incredibly well. And it meant that all those other kind of hectic things that go on at the beginning of a year, when you're sorting out timetables and doing the induction program for a new sixth form cohort, that was all a lot smoother because we could have all timetables sorted and ready in good time. It just, like you said, lots of marginal gains just meant that lots of other aspects of the starter term for the sixth form just ran a lot more smoothly for us.
Okay, excellent. So we're going to wrap it up in a minute, but as you quite rightly say, we don't want to focus on COVID too much. But as we are in the situation, has your school actually used the platform to run any open days? We've seen quite a few of our customer schools doing that because they can't operate them as they would normally. Or were there any other benefits that you found specifically because of the situation that the platform has helped you with?
Yeah, well, the short answer is we haven't done it yet, but that is absolutely the plan. Of course, yeah, the prospect of running a real face-to-face open day or open evening for the sixth form is looking slim to none at the moment. We're probably going to do something face-to-face with our internal year 11 students because we can keep them in their year group bubble. No parents involved or anything like that, but we'll be able to do something face-to-face with them. But as I mentioned before, we do rely on a healthy chunk of newcomer students applying and joining our sixth form each year. And so, yeah, we're absolutely looking at using a virtual open day, open evening, and linking that through Admissions Plus. So if they're registering their interest for our open evening through Admissions Plus to begin with, then it means they're already essentially starting the application process, and they've already sort of in some ways bought into the way that we're going to be working and processing their application. And again, you have a lot of floating voters at this time of year where they're looking at a range of different sixth forms within schools, a range of different colleges. And I'm a strong believer that, you know, the little differences really can make the difference between a student really engaging and buying into a certain institution or not. You know, I've worked at quite a few contrasting institutions. I've worked at Rochdale Sixth Form College, which is a really high performing sixth form college just outside Greater Manchester. And so I know how competitive and how aggressively a lot of the sixth form colleges will be trying to recruit students, and sitting there thinking we're a grammar school, you know, students will come to us, actually doesn't work like that. So, you know, we need to make sure that right from the moment they start engaging with us this year, probably remotely through a virtual open evening, they're getting the right impression of the school. And so that's one of the key reasons we're progressing with it in this way.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Tom, for your insights. And I think we're going to open it up to all the participants. If you would like to ask a question to Tom, if you could type it in the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen. And then after that, we'll spend a few minutes doing that. And then I think Anthony is going to demonstrate the platform for you. So anyone got any questions? Okay, so Tom, we've got a question here from Sam. Thank you, Sam. You said there were some small glitches on enrolment day. Could you explain what were the problems that you experienced?
Yeah, so I'm quite confident that the main glitch we had was quite specific to this year, and I think that had it been a normal year, so to speak, we wouldn't have encountered it. So quite early on, when schools were closed and we went into lockdown, we quite understandably had a lot of very concerned Year 11s about what are their grades going to be, what's the implications for their post-16 options, either with us or at other sixth form colleges. And of course, there were a lot of unknowns about how centre assessed grades and all that system was going to work out. So the one thing that we could do at that stage was we said to all of our internal Year 11 students that we would make their offer to stay on in the sixth form unconditional. So whereas we typically have entry requirements, which are 2 grade 7s and 3 grade 6s, we said to our Year 11 cohort, regardless of what happens with your GCSE grades, we will offer you a place in the sixth form. So that made our enrolment day a little bit tricky, because we had our cohort of internal Year 11s that we'd given unconditional offers to, whereas all our newcomers, we were still requesting that they still offered the 2 7s, 3 6s. And so the enrolment process, you can set the system up such that students that have met the entry requirements can actually tick the boxes and select the courses that they wanted to and sort of progress with their enrolment, whereas previously those that didn't meet the entry requirement, they couldn't actually complete the enrolment form. So that's one way of setting the system up. We were in that dilemma of we had half the students that, regardless of their grades, we were going to give them a place anyway, and another half we were wanting to enforce our entry criteria with. So we just had a few teething problems in trying to manage that effectively. We could say in a typical non-COVID year, we'd be asking all of our students to meet our entry requirements. And so I think the system itself is geared up for that very well. It's just that we were trying to kind of show a bit of flexibility to some students and not others, which just caused 1 or 2 issues. I mean, as it turned out, of the 178 students that we enrolled, there were only actually 4 that didn't meet our entry criteria anyway, regardless of making their offers unconditional. So it was just for those few individuals who the system kind of blocked them getting a bit further with their enrolment. And it just involved a couple of emails, a couple of phone calls, rather than it all being done on the system. But it was, like I said, a couple of glitches, but nothing that couldn't be resolved relatively easily on that morning.
Okay, thank you. Yes, it was a bit of a different year, I think, all round, it's fair to say. So Nicola's asked us a question. Thank you, Nicola. So from what I understand of the system, students are able to change their courses of their own free will. How did you manage this?
Right. So, I mean, part of the sixth form pages on our website, we sort of advertise how to contact the sixth form team if they have any queries. Once they'd submitted their application and they received an offer, at that point they could log back into their application, but they couldn't make any changes. In order to make any changes, they had to specifically email a member of our sixth form admin team to say, oh, I was thinking about doing further maths, but I want to actually do computer science now. Is that okay? At which point we could say, at the moment, it looks like 1 to 2 full, or we could say, oh yeah, that looks like it's fine. The grades, your predicted grades that you've got on your application form still meet the criteria for the subject change that you're looking at making. So we could tell them there and then, yes, we can do that. No, we can't. And then we, from our end, manually change that on the system. One of the really good functions on the system is, of course, the staff in school have, like, you can set them up as administrators, but there's a button you can click on every single student's application, which is something like, I think it's impersonate, and you click on this button and it shows you the application form from the point of view of the student. So you could actually log in pretending to be the student and make the changes necessary on there, without actually letting the student themselves do that. So queries like that, how many did we have? We probably had, over the course of several months, maybe between 20 and 30 requests of, oh, I've changed my mind, can I swap from this subject to that subject? So that was really quite easily managed. Just to probably took a couple of minutes to deal with each of those as and when they occurred.
Okay, lovely, thank you. So anyone else got a question? And if not, we're going to move on to product demo with Anthony. I believe that's the next slot. So we've got another question here. Thank you, Nicola. So on results day, you have to open the courses back up. How did you manage the students changing then?
Ah, I see what you mean. Right. Okay. So yeah, on results day, on an enrollment day, the student themselves has to kind of log back into their application. They've already completed an application form, but on results day, they then kind of complete a further enrollment form. And on the enrollment form, they change their predicted grades to their actual GCSE grades they were awarded on the day. And that's when they make their final subject change, like subject selections. So on that enrollment form, let's say a student picked biology, chemistry, maths back when they applied much earlier on in the year, and they come to enroll and they've met the entry criteria for those subjects, it will automatically be pre-filled those 3 subjects still on their enrollment form. And so for the majority of students, they just stuck with the subjects that they'd applied to originally. That said, there are still some students who might have applied for a certain combination of subjects and then on enrollment day actually changed their mind for 1, 2, and I think maybe in just a very small number of cases, some students changing their mind completely and apply or trying to enroll for 3 completely different subjects. Now that's made very clear on the enrollment form from the school's point of view. So once the students have filled in their enrollment form and clicked send, it comes to school where you have your enrollment team running the enrollment day, and you essentially, a part of the process of completing the processing the enrollment form is checking what subjects did they apply for, what subjects have they now tried to enroll for. If they match, great, you enroll them as per usual. If they've kind of changed their mind and have tried to enroll in another subject which has gaps, you can just enroll them there and then if you know you've got space and it's not a problem. But if a student has changed their mind and wants to join a subject which is really oversubscribed already, so for example, the example I gave before was business studies. We had quite a flurry of students all of a sudden wanting to do business studies. It's made very clear on that enrollment page, from the school's point of view, they applied for these subjects, they now want these ones, and business studies is a different one. And so at that point, you can add them onto a waiting list rather than enrolling them there and then directly. And that was one of the jobs we then dealt with later on in the day, on enrollment day, when we looked at what our numbers were actually looking like. We tracked them live as the day had gone on. And that's when you can actually, through the system, through the Admissions Plus system, then send an automated email to say, well, actually, sorry, we know that you tried to enroll for business studies. We actually don't have capacity for that. We have enrolled you for the subjects you said originally. And then get back in touch with us if you want to discuss any further, swaps and changes and that sort of thing. So yeah, that's the sort of scenario where it did cause a few follow-up emails and bits of communication in the days following enrollment day. But it certainly wasn't a case of we got lots of students swapping what subjects they wanted to study and us not really realizing whether they'd swapped or whether they'd stuck with their original decisions. It was made very clear, so you could sort of take the appropriate steps at that stage when it occurred.
Fantastic, thank you, Tom. So I think I would just like to say thank you very much to you. We really appreciate your time today to joining us on the webinar. So I think all the team are still obviously on. So if anyone does have any other questions, just please continue to put them through. And Anthony.